Well, hello and welcome to this edition of Campaign Catch-Up, joined as always by CBN's David Brody and John Stolnis. Gentlemen, a lot to get to post-debate. There's still a lot of commentary flying around about what we saw on Tuesday night. And let's just start first with early indications as to how the electorate's moving at all, if we know anything at all with the numbers. I know, David, you've got some new data on where evangelicals stand.
I do, Dan, and it's great news, not just good news. It's great news for Donald Trump, and it has to do with evangelicals' support for him. White evangelical Protestant voters, that's considered kind of Trump's base, if you will, 82%. That's his support among white evangelical Protestants, 82%. Now, that puts Kamala Harris at about 16%, 2%, I guess, are just, at Denny's. I'm not quite sure what they're doing. But that's a bad number for Kamala, by the way. And so why is it a good number? Why is it a bad number? Because Donald Trump won the White House with 80% support of evangelicals. He's at 82% right now, which is even better. So 80% is the litmus test, or at least that's the threshold, I should say. And if he's over 80%, he's going to win. And that's not my analysis. That's actually from people like Ralph Reed and Tony Perkins, and go down the list. They're all saying that they crunch the numbers. They do this for a living. If he's at 80% or higher, he's going to win. Well, he's at 82%. And the understanding, at least within the get out the vote operation from an evangelical perspective, is that that number is going to even go higher come election day, because the get out the vote effort is still going on. The voter research is still going on. More evangelicals are getting more in tune with what's going on with the election as election day nears. So you put it all together. I mean, we could be seeing potentially 83, 84%. And if that is the case, and forget even 83, 84, if it stays at 82, it's over. It's over. It doesn't matter. We can talk about anything else. I mean, let's go talk about the weather at this point. I mean, because it is over.
Well, does that depend? Can I just throw it in there, David? Does that depend on how many of them come out? I mean, it's great that he's got the high number, but if the turnout's really low, does that impact it at all?
Well, I mean, you can make that argument. The problem is that it still holds true throughout all elections as it relates to the evangelical vote. In other words, whatever the whatever the count is, the majority count, whether it be 24% of the electorate, or do white evangelical Christians make up, 26% of the electorate? Either way, that 80% figure of whatever that percentage is, 24, 25, 26, it still gets Trump over the top. Now, of course, if there are other subsets, if you will, of voters that are voting at a larger clip, especially in the Kamala Harris situation, for example, college-educated white suburban women, if that number is higher, much higher, then that might offset some of that. But that's not expected to be at that number. 82% is, percentage points matter here. And if you're at 82%, that's going to be a very tough number for anybody to overcome.
Yeah. And we've seen, as I said, the spin the last couple of days here, or day and a half or so since the debate actually took place, John. And obviously it's a little bit quick of a turnaround to really know what's happening in the polls. Right. But, what's your sense as to what we're seeing as far as, what we know now from the polls and what we can expect to see going forward here?
I think some of the numbers David just mentioned are pretty interesting, especially in light of the fact that some pro-life groups have been raising eyebrows at former President Trump's position on abortion and some of the statements that he's made, where it seemingly feels as like there needs to be some kind of flexibility. There needs to be some kind of a certain number of weeks where he would feel most comfortable. But he also has said it's up to the states, and each state should decide for itself what is comfortable for them. But the pro-life community has not been happy with what Donald Trump has been saying over the last few weeks. Certainly happy that he got 3 conservative Supreme Court justices nominated and Roe v. Wade was overturned. But I guess what we're seeing, if those numbers are to be believed, is that most evangelical Christians do not share the same level of concern as pro-life groups are seemingly voicing on that particular issue. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe there's some noise in those numbers that we're not hearing. But if his numbers are continuing to be that strong, despite some of those concerns, despite some of those statements made by former President Trump, I think it's an interesting cross section, and certainly worth diving in. We'd love to see more data done on that particular issue with that group, but we may not get that.
And John, like, where do they go? Because if you are frustrated at what Trump is saying, like, do you then go run to Kamala Harris? I mean, I think if you're pro-life, that's not.
And that's why
I think
that's why he's. I think that's one of the reasons he feels comfortable with this position, is because I think he has seen Republicans lose some elections in part because of this issue in certain states, and he doesn't see it. He doesn't see a total abortion ban on a national level as a winning strategy for him, and so I think you're right. There's no, if the alternative is what the Harris and Walz campaign are saying, what their position on abortion is, then if you're an evangelical, you probably do end up going over to Donald Trump, even if he doesn't align with you perfectly on the issue.
Well, let's also remember, guys, that this is the first presidential election since Roe v. Wade, And so this idea that we're in 2004 or 1984 or any of those fours, where there were all these single issue pro-life voters because Roe v. Wade hadn't been overturned, that train has left the station. That there are very few single issue voters anymore, especially on the life issue after post Roe v. Wade. I think what you're seeing here is that evangelicals are seeing two things. One, Roe v. Wade has been overturned, so it might not be as much of an issue. And two, we're in a different culture war situation today. It's a much different situation. It's not just the life issue. The marriage issue, sadly, has fallen by the wayside to a degree with Obergefell in the Supreme Court decision of 2015 when Obama was president. So now it's kind of like a new host of issues as it relates to gender transition surgeries and women playing in men's sports and men playing in women's sports. Sorry, I got it reversed. Men playing in women's sports and the weaponization of government in terms of putting pro-life activists behind bars. But, that type of stuff. That's where we're at from a cultural perspective.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit here and let's go, because people are still kind of talking about what happened at this debate. And there is a lot of talk still around the moderators. And so specifically, the claim here and the accusation is that it was 3 versus 1, essentially, because you had Muir and I'm forgetting the other co-host name.
Lindsey Davis.
Lindsey Davis. I keep forgetting it. It's one of those names that for whatever reason, I'll just never remember. But anyway, Lindsey Davis. So they jumped in multiple times to fact check Trump, but then there were several opportunities, according to everything that I'm seeing online, that they could have done that for Harris, but neglected to do that. David, what do you make of these claims?
Well, they're all legitimate. I mean, we can have a larger debate. We were talking before we came on, and John, maybe you can bring this up after I'm kind of finished, just speaking for about an hour and a half here. We can have a larger discussion about the role of a debate moderator. But look, I mean, to any casual observer, not a partisan, just a casual observer, it's pretty clear that they continue to fact check Trump in real time and didn't do any fact checks for Kamala. I mean, that's just like facts. I mean, I'm going to fact check the fact checkers. I mean, it's just a fact. So it's clearly frustrating. And then here's the other problem. Even when they did fact check Trump, they got a couple of their fact checks wrong. I mean, the whole thing on abortion. I mean, Lindsey Davis said there's no state in the country that allows birth or for children. I just say children for abortions to what am I trying to say? But basically, for
when the baby's born, like in a botched abortion, and the baby's alive, and then they neglect care afterwards. I think that's essentially the situation he was bringing up.
Right. Sorry about that. But the bottom line is that's not true. Minnesota has a law right now. Tim Walz Estate. I mean, 8 babies were born alive, literally, and denied life sustaining care. That's called killing a baby. I mean, if you deny someone life-sustaining care, that's called, by any definition, you're killing a baby. So they were wrong. And where's the retraction by ABC News? Anyhow, there's a lot to unpack there, but it makes you wonder a couple of things. Number one, what would have happened if it was a conservative-friendly network? Would Kamala Harris been able to, so to speak, survive a 3-on-1? I think, me thinks not. And two, it does raise the specter of kind of what the future holds here, because honestly, this whole idea of the old school way of doing things, I think, has to change after this. I think this is a watershed moment in debate history.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I like our idea, David. We talked on another segment about maybe in the future they just need to do a home and away, right? You just have you have one kind of side that's kind of leans one political party, one that leans other political party, and it's just a much tougher interview on the away game for you, and see who can handle the away game better.
Yeah, can I quickly say before John jumps in? I think that, to use the baseball analogy, I decided they should do a day-night doubleheader. I think they literally a debate 1 to 3, then get on a bus and go somewhere else and play a night game. That's the way I see it.
Right. Let's stop pretending. But John, what do you think of the role of the moderator here? Because should they be fact checking? Should they just kind of sit back? I mean, what's your take on that?
I will say, and some of the folks that I follow on X and online are not conservatives. They're on the other side of the fence, and they believe that it is the role of a moderator to aggressively fact check things that are not. And there are others who decide it's not the role of the moderator. I think where some people get maybe confused, or they think that the job should be the same, is if you're an interviewer interviewing someone. So let's say former President Trump sits down for a one-on-one interview with David Muir, and he says stuff that ABC News or that David Muir believes should be fact-checked. You can make the argument that an interviewer to an interviewee should be fact-checking. I think that all of us would want an interviewer to fact-check or to challenge an interviewee, no matter who it is, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, if they were saying something that they knew not to be true, or if they had their facts wrong and they needed to have their facts straightened out. I think it's different when you get to a debate stage. I mean, my kids are getting started in doing debate, and it's the job of the other debater, the person that they are debating against, to come at them with facts. If they've gotten something wrong, to rebut, right? I mean, that's the whole point of, like, you make your statement and then you have a rebuttal and then you may have another rebuttal after that. But that's how it's supposed to go. And with the CNN debate, the CNN hosts asked the questions, and it was on the other candidate to rebut something if someone said something that wasn't true or that wasn't accurate. In this case, the moderators for ABC News decided that it was going to be their job, which I think if you're even, it's fine. It's kind of like if you're watching baseball and the home plate umpire stinks, right? He's calling pitches that are a foot off the plate strikes. It's awful. He should be doing his job better. But if it's fair, if you're watching a football game and there's a lot of penalties, but it's being called fairly, you can at least say, well, at least it's even. At least both sides are getting the same bad calls, and you just have to adjust, right? You have to adjust your game plan. You have to change what it is that you're doing. With this debate, it did not seem as though the fact-checking certainly was as vociferous against Kamala Harris as it was against Donald Trump. And as someone personally who kind of bristles when I hear a lot of talk against the media necessarily, I want to make sure that the media is held accountable when they are off track. And in this case, I do believe ABC News did not handle this situation fairly. It did not seem as though that it was even-handed one way or the other. And I think that has to be something that's addressed moving forward. I'm not sure how, but I think the role of a moderator in a debate is to simply to keep the cars on the train, right? Just make sure that the debate questions are being asked, that the timing is being followed, and allow for each of the debaters to counterpoint and counterpunch.
Yeah, and it makes it. I'll just add to that, John. It makes it easier on the moderator if they don't try to fact check real time and make it even, because it's almost impossible to get that even. Maybe you don't have the fact off the top of your head on something that somebody says, even though you know it's wrong, and you can't jump in, and so you're just going to leave stuff on the floor there. And in this case, they tried it, I guess, and didn't fact check Harris one time. And then one other thing, David, before you hop in, that I noticed that I thought was subtle. It was a little more subtle, but it was kind of to what John's speaking of when you choose to come in and not. When both candidates kind of danced around a couple different answers and didn't really fully give an answer. But when Trump did it, Muir called him out on it and said, you didn't really answer the question there. It's a straightforward question. What's your answer? And then when Harris did it, he just changed the topics and said, I want to move on. And so, yeah, it's when you start interjecting like that, you better do your best to keep it balanced, because then people have a legitimate gripe against you.
So many great points. And John, just to take a little bit of an issue, maybe you want to restate it or maybe not. But you said that the ABC didn't fact check Harris as what was it?
Vociferously. Yeah.
Vociferously. Sorry, that's a very long syllable word. I typically don't use those. Vociferously as Trump. Let's be clear. As Dan said, they did not fact check her once. Not once. It wasn't as vociferously.
No, that's true.
That suggests that there was a couple for her and 7 for Trump. No, it was whatever it was for Trump, 4, 5, 6, 0 for Harris. That's important. I mean, I want to clarify that because, if we start to kind of get into like, well, it wasn't as much. No, it wasn't. It was literally a shutout, and I think that's important. Number 2, Dan, to your point. I think there's a lot to say here. Look, I think the role of a debate moderator should not be a fact checker. You should not be, because here's why. It's up to the candidate to fact check, because guess what? You're running for president of the United States. Do your job and figure it out. This is the #1 job in the entire world. If you can't, on your feet, be nimble enough to fact check someone in real time, then get on the stage and go to Denny's. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so I feel strongly about it. I kind of feel a bit angry about it, and shame on Donald Trump. Shame on Donald Trump for not fact checking Kamala Harris on all the stuff she was saying. She was getting away with lie after lie after lie. Well, the debate moderators weren't doing their job, but Donald Trump wasn't doing his job either.
I think that's that's the frustrating part when they try to get into the fact checking thing, especially when it becomes one-sided, sort of how it was in this particular debate, because to the average person who maybe doesn't pay attention to a lot of this stuff, there is, a certain amount of authority that comes from the debate moderator, right? They're up there, they're the official, and they're constantly fact checking Trump. And then the other candidate, it kind of looks like, well, then when Trump tries to say, hey, you were incorrect on that, you lied. I mean, I think he said she lied a few times on something, but it just doesn't land as well to maybe a person who's not paying attention because the moderator's not backing them up.
Well, just to quickly follow up on that, to your point, Dan, the problem here is that you can't be a fact checker as a moderator because it becomes subjective.
Yeah.
And that's the main point. Because honestly, both campaigns will have a gripe. They'll say you didn't fact check on that, but you fact checked on this. And we can go down. I mean, literally. You can't do it. You'll never win that game. So therefore, you shouldn't be in the business of that game. You should just be. I do think they should be. The debate moderator should be clarifying positions. So if it's not clear, so did you mean this? Or I'm just trying to understand exactly. That's fine. Or you didn't answer the question. So for example, Lindsay Davis. I mean, it was atrocious. She asked a really good question. She said. You're to Kamala Harris, you flip-flop. I'm paraphrasing. You didn't say flip-flop, but you change your position on Medicare, you change your position on decriminalization at the border, you change your position. And then Kamala Harris said, Lindsay, I'm going to get to all of that. But first, let me talk about this. Well, guess what? She talked about that and never addressed any of the other stuff. So Lindsay Davis didn't do her job by following up and say, okay, thank you for the 2 minutes, Kamala. But now could you answer my question? She never did that. And then shame on Donald Trump for saying, you know what? He should have looked right into the camera and said to the American people, did you see that, American people? She didn't answer any of those questions. So Kamala, I know I can't ask you a question, but technically because the debate rules are as such, but let me tell you that in this, and then go into her flip-flops, but he didn't do it either. So, and I just want to say one last thing. Sorry, I know I'm saying a lot here, but the problem that the conservative media have here is that they're all amped up and all upset about ABC, and well, they should be, but they're letting Trump off the hook a little bit too.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
You know what? And that's not right. I mean, two things can be equally true. ABC News was horrible. That is a headline. Donald Trump was horrible. That's also a headline. And the conservatives just want to talk about ABC. And I understand why they want to talk about ABC. I get it. They don't want to talk about their guy. But their guy was bad. And they need to understand that. And not that they care, but I'm just saying that's just a little disconcerting.
But and it's true because this is the guy who, I mean, this is normally one of Trump's strong suits, right? So it's not like this ongoing critique of Trump. he's usually pretty good with zingers in those situations, right? And like when the media's when ABC, like he should have felt out that they were being a little one-sided on that. And I was surprised there was no zinger from him saying, "Am I debating you, David? Are we having the debate here? What's going on?" Like that's the sort of thing I've come to expect from Trump.
Because go ahead, John. I'm going to answer that, but go ahead, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I before you brought that point up, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think if the Trump campaign is going to spend the next week, 2 weeks, and conservatives in the media are going to spend the next 2 weeks talking about the debate moderators, they're not going to do their candidate any favor. Like there has to be an assessment of how prepared was Donald Trump for this debate. He spent the days leading up to the debate continuing to campaign, continuing to do his rallies, which is totally understandable. We've seen candidates do that before. I think this could be a situation where he rolled in there knowing this was his, seventh debate in the general election. Maybe there was a sense of overconfidence coming off the previous debate, coming into this one against someone he'd never debated before. I don't know that and I don't know this for sure, I don't know that he and his campaign put in the work to actually be prepared for this debate. And Kamala Harris spent 5 days in Pittsburgh. She got off the campaign trail. I think former President Trump even ridiculed her or poked fun at the fact that she was nowhere to be seen on the campaign trail, that she was getting ready for this debate. Well, whatever it is that they prepared her for, they did a fantastic job. They knew exactly what lines to feed her to get under Trump's skin. And the Trump it felt like Trump was doing a campaign rally on the debate stage, and that he was expecting the crowd there to cheer him when he said some of these things. And it just, there was no second act. There was nothing else to go to when that material didn't work.
And I want to clear something. I want to clear something up real quick here, guys, for everyone watching, because I know people who like Harris, get mad at us in the comments whenever we say something, against her, or the ABC moderators, whatever. The people that like Trump get mad at us when we criticize Trump on any performance thing. We're looking at this very zoomed in, guys. You have to understand, when you're looking at a debate, a presidential debate, what you are looking at is how we know Trump supporters are going to vote for Trump, right? And so the things that he says are going to resonate with Trump supporters. The Harris voters that are already in her camp, all the things she's saying, it's going to resonate with them. What we're looking at is, what are they saying to win those undecided voters and get more voters into their camp? So it's a very specific look at the things they're doing. So when you say something like, well, Trump didn't have a good debate, it's not that he didn't have any, good points from the conservative perspective. It's not that he didn't say anything that was, overwhelmingly true or, resonating with the American people. It's, did he do it in an effective enough manner, or did she do it in an effective enough manner to win more people to their side that they didn't have before? I just want to clear that up, because that's what we're looking at. We're really zooming in on this thing. And I think people get a little sensitive at times and read too much into the critiques.
Yeah, I just want to respond to something John said. I disagree in terms of the preparation. Look, first of all, Donald Trump, all right, he's not sitting there reading white papers. Okay, got it. We all know that. But that's not what we're talking about here. Donald Trump does things the way Donald Trump does things. But guess what? The way he prepared for this debate was probably the way he prepared for the Joe Biden debate and some other debates that he did well in. So you can't make the argument that he didn't prepare less. I think Donald Trump prepares the way he does all the time. I think the difference here is that the variable was Kamala Harris getting under his skin, and specifically, and this is the part, and Dan, I think you and I talked about this, specifically, it wasn't the jabs, it was the actual personal insults. It was the rally size, and you're a disgrace, and 81 million people want you fired. When she started doing that, he got undisciplined. And that was the problem. He had all the material. He knew it all. He was prepared because, he lives and breathes this stuff. Okay, so, maybe he's a little older, whatever. You want to take a percentage off for that. But the point is that I don't think it was preparation, because I think his preparation for this was really going to be the same pretty much for.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought in Tulsi Gabbard, for goodness sake. I mean, they really don't typically do that. He was prepared. He just got off his game because she was very, very good. at the specific insult.
Let's go to, we've done several sports analogies here, guys. So you're saying that Harris essentially played the Draymond Green role, right? Like she got under the Dennis Rodman. She got under the skin of the opponent, and then, you know, you've practiced all week for a game, and then you're playing, and then somebody irritates you and gets you annoyed, and you start getting technical fouls all over the place. So you're saying is that a fair analogy there to what you're saying?
Yes, Donald Trump is Draymond Green. Correct. I mean,
Harris was Green, and
Kamala
Trump.
Harris is Draymond. Kamala Harris is Draymond.
Yes.
Trump was Rodman. Yeah.
And then yeah, he fell for it and went. All right, guys. Well, I mean, it's an interesting conversation because, like you said, I don't know if we're gonna have another debate or not, but it'll be. Oh
yeah.
I mean, we'll start. You think so? You think we're having another one?
I think we will, and here's why. For a couple of reasons. One, I think Kamala Harris's campaign still believes truth serum here. I think they think they're losing. I think they know they're losing. We got to see forest from the trees here. Everybody's like, oh, she had a great night. She's much better than we thought. She didn't do word salad. Hold on, she's losing this race. And how do I know she's losing this race? One reason, she came out aggressive at the top. And the reason not with jabs and insults at the top. If you notice, the jabs and insults didn't come till later. She came out aggressive at the top. Anybody that's aggressive in a debate at the top, that suggests they are losing, that they feel like they need to make an imprint, a difference. And so that's why she wants a second debate, because they think they're losing. They still think they're losing. And once again, losing, I'm not saying by a lot, but they think they're losing. And now after this debate, darn straight they want another debate. Having said that, they better be careful. Be careful what you wish for, because Trump typically doesn't do two bad debates in a row. As a matter of fact, I would suggest he'll be very good the next time. As for Trump, of course he wants another debate. He wants a do-over. He wants the do-over.
Yeah, I think you would expect to see more sort of Trumpian zingers and things of that nature if we were to get another one. John, what do you see coming down the road? Another debate?
Yeah, I mean, I think David's right. I mean, if I'm the Harris campaign, I wouldn't do another one. But I think that she probably will. She had said before this debate that if he shows up for the one last Tuesday or on Tuesday night, that she would be ready to do another one, likely in October. And so now that she's said that, I imagine they'll probably keep her to her word. It'd just be interesting to see if there is a third one. What outlet is it? Would she agree to do a Fox News debate? That seems to be the most logical, if there is a third debate, the most logical spot for the next one. But I think you're right. And I think the numbers are so close right now. And I think it's interesting if we look back and we can kind of see, is she winning? Is she losing right now? David, you've talked about numerous times the fact that the numbers in the polling generally don't reflect the amount of support that Trump has had. At this time, on September 12th, back in 2020, Biden had a nearly 8-point lead, according to the Real Clear Politics average poll. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was up 2.8 points at this point, again, on a national scale. And right now, Harris has maybe, it's like a point, less than a point and a half, depending on the poll. So this is a close race. It probably is Trump's in the lead in most of these battleground states, if previous polling is to be believed. And so I think there is still something for her to win. Now, that being said, I don't think this is going to happen, but if she jumps 6-7 points in some of these polls or anything like that, then maybe that changes the equation for her. Again, I don't think that's likely, but we kind of also need to wait and see a couple of days what new polling looks like and see if there's enough of a bump for her to discourage her from doing a third debate.
Well,
or a second for her.
And the conventional wisdom is you've got to be at +5 if you're a Democrat in national polls. National, I'm talking about. You got to be at +5 to have a shot at winning. If you're under +5 going into November 5th, you're going to lose. Most likely you're going to lose. I mean, unless there's some wild card out there, you're going to lose.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting. You mentioned the 8-point lead that Biden had at this time, John, and that race in 2020 ended up, the official tally was Biden, I think, by about 4 points. So to your point, David, I mean, that's, you got to have that 5-point lead if you're a Democrat. I mean, it's going to shrink to some extent, but it shrunk 4 there for Biden. And so if he was under that 5%, it would have been a dead heat. All right. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate it. As always, good conversation, and we'll look forward to doing it again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Dan.
Thanks, John.